Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial we will work together this knitting cardigan. I called it Rayee, which Rayee means stripes in French. What I want you to know from the beginning is that I will work in the tutorial a small sample, so it's not the original sample as you are used to, and I hope that this tutorial will be helpful and will help you with the written pattern which you can find on my website. Also, during the video, I will give you the numbers for each size from extra small up to 5 extra large, but these numbers are according to my tension. So the information of my gauge, you can find them in the description below, and if you get to that, then you can follow the numbers written in this tutorial and of course into the pattern. So this is the cardigan. I worked with stripes, and because I didn't know at first if I will make a tutorial or a pattern for this, but you requested for, so we will work the entire piece up to the armpit, meaning the back panel and front panels, and then we will divide the entire piece into front panels and back panels and work them separately. My stripes, the number of rows for my stripes are not even. The last one I had for the last color in the body, I had just a few rows less than the rest of the cardigan. But if you want, you can calculate how many rows you'll have and to split the colors into an even number of rows. The ribbing, the elastic on the front panel is worked together with the front panels itself. So at the beginning and then at the end of the row for the piece up to the armpit, we will work a few stitches in this ribbing pattern. So let's see, I am using for this small sample the same yarn as I use for the original sample, which is the Wonder acrylic yarn by Furls. You also need 8mm needles. I have here 80 centimeters cable. You can work the piece because it's work flat. You can work with straight needles if you find it easier this way, but needs to be some longer ones because you'll have quite a few stitches for at least for the first section. So now we will cast on. So for the original sample, and I will give you the numbers right away, we will cast on 142 stitches. And if you will want to adjust the number of stitches according with your gauge or the type of yarn or the size of the needles, you should know that you will need a multiple of 2. Now we will start to work on the ribbing. We will pass the first stitch always because we want a nice edge, and we will work then after passing slipping the first stitch. We will work a 1 to 1 ribbing, so 1 knit and 1 purl. For this I'm knitting in the Russian style, I think it's called, so I'm purling basically with the yarn below. So that's why my knitting stitches for the rest of the rows will be in the back. But any type of knitting, if it's continental, English style, you just knit 1 and purl 1. So don't look at how I'm making the purls. This is why I will knit the stitches in behind, because let's see one more time. So I'm just putting it on below. Okay, so this one was a knit stitch, and we will continue to knit 1 purl 1, and at the end of the row we will always finish with a knit 1. and we will start repeating this ribbing until we will have 8 rows in total. So now again, when starting row 2, we will slip the first stitch and then following the pattern. So now it was a purl, the first stitch after the slip one, and then a knit one. So we will continue, as I said, 8 rows, or depending on how many rows you will want your elastic to be or the ribbing, you can work as many rows as you wish until you reach the desired length for the ribbing. Now we finished the ribbing. I have here on this small sample only 6 rows, so in case you worked 8 and you find it a bit thicker than mine, then don't worry, you are on the it's okay. So now we will start with the eyelet stitch pattern, but the first 8 rows, 8 stitches, sorry, we will work the same ribbing stitch pattern. You can use stitch markers to mark this first and last 8 stitches. I will have in this sample only 6, but you should work 8. And then we will start with the eyelet stitch pattern. So I started with knitting 2 together and then yarn over. And we will repeat until we will have 8 stitches left. So in case you are knitting continental as usual and not like me, you should knit the stitches as normal. So don't knit them in the back, because this is not how this pattern is calling for. So you simply knit 2 together. And we will repeat until we will have 8 stitches left. Because we started the row with knit 2 together, we need to finish with the yarn over, because we don't need to decrease the number of stitches that we had. So we started with a knit 2 together, then we finish with the yarn over, and then we continue and working the last 8 stitches in the ribbing pattern. Now we will turn and we are at the second row of our pattern. So now again we will work the first 8 stitches in a ribbing pattern. And then we will start purling all the stitches until we will have 8 stitches left, which are the ribbing stitches. So at the end, when we have only 8 stitches left, we will finish the row with the ribbing pattern. Now we turn and we start our row 3 from the repeated pattern. Again, we're working the first 8 stitches into the ribbing. And then we will start the eyelet pattern, but because I wanted to be a zigzag, we started the previous row with knit 2 together. So now on the third row we're starting with a yarn over and then knit 2 together. And we will repeat this section until we will have 8 stitches left. Now we need to finish the pattern with knit 2 together, because we started with a yarn over, and then we will finish the row with the ribbing pattern. And now for the fourth row, we will repeat row number 2, So we will work the first 8 stitches in the ribbing pattern and then purl all the stitches until we have 8 stitches left and finishing the row with the ribbing pattern. And we will repeat this 4 rows until we will have 16 rows, or if you wanted to have the stripes a different number of rows for the stripes, then you should work as many rows as you wish, but until changing the color. But I will keep it a multiple of 4 just to be easier for you to follow the pattern or this tutorial. So now we are changing the color. I don't have a particular method for this, but if you want to do it other way, you can do it. So I'm simply starting the next row with the other color that I want to use. So again, we're working the ribbing and repeating the same first 2 rows. So we will repeat around row 1 and row 2 in the second color. And then after finishing 2 rows in the second color that I will want to use, I will work 2 more rows into the first color. This is my personal way color pattern, let's just say it like that. But remember that this cardigan can be worked even in one single color if you want, and even changing the colors right away, so you don't have to work 2 and 2 rows. So after working 2 rows in the second color that I will want to use, I will work 2 more rows in the first color, and then I will start with the second color again and working the next stripe. Okay, so now that I finished 2 rows, I can cut the first color because I won't need it anymore. And I will pick up the second color, which I have it here at the beginning of the row, 2 rows below. And I will start repeating the same pattern starting from row 1 of the eyelet pattern until I will have again 16 rows, then changing again the color, repeating those 2 by 2 and 2 rows, and we will repeat this pattern until we will finish the length up to the armpit, and I will give you right away the numbers for this section. Okay, so we will work in total 56 rows, and I will show you right away how it is looking on the original sample. So basically I worked 3 sections of color like so. Let me show you. Okay, so here am I. So I worked 3 sections of color, but pay attention that we have 56 rows. So for the last color, I didn't make the 2 and 2 rows. That ones are into the sleeve section. But you can work 60 rows if you would like. And now after finishing everything, so we finished the length up to the armpit. By the way, if you want to adjust the length of the cardigan, we just need to work more rows on this section, but keep it a multiple of 4 to be easier for you to follow the pattern. So now we will split or divide this entire section into 3, which are the front panels and the back panels. And we will work the armhole depth on these 3 sections. And I will start with where my yarn is, which will be the right front panel, and I will give you right away the numbers for each section and for each size. If you want to adjust, you need to remember that for the front panels you need to have an uneven number of stitches, and for the back panel an even number of stitches. And you can get to that by dividing the entire number of stitches by 2, and this will give you the number of stitches for the back, but keep the even number, and then the rest of the stitches divided by 2 again, and you will have the number of stitches for the front panel. Now working the front panel, it will be easy, so we are working only into the stitches required for the front panel. We will start with the ribbing for the first 8 stitches, and we will need to finish the section with a knit stitch. So we will have 1 stitch at the end. That's why we need a multiple of 2 plus 1, because it's difficult to finish the row in a yarn over, so that's why it's better to have 1 more stitch to finish it. And now we will turn per all the stitches until we will have 8 stitches left, and then the 8 stitches left we will work them into the ribbing stitch pattern. You can use stitch markers, of course, to mark the stitches for each section, and this will be easier to know where to stop. But after a few rows this will be super easy to see, because the front panel starting to be higher and longer than the back panel. And basically for the front panel and this armhole depth, we will repeat the same 4 rows pattern, and I will give you right away the numbers that we will have for this section. And now that I finished the front panel, so these are the number of rows that we will work. So I have 30 rows for the size small, which is my original sample. And now we will put the stitches on hold using a crochet hook. You can bind off if you want, and then at the end I'm needing the stitches. I need the stitches to be live for my method of joining the shoulders. But it can be worked in the classic way, so simply bind off and then you will stitch the shoulders together. Okay, so this is how I put the stitches on hold. So basically working with the crochet hook as it was my right needle, and then passing the new loop through the loop that I have on my hook. Okay, now we are about to start the back panel, and for the back panel, as I said, we have an even number of stitches, and we need to look at my previous stitches, or the stitches that we worked, or how we worked the stitches on the first row of the front panel. So I will start with a knit. The first one and the last stitch will be a knit stitch, and then I will start with an yarn over to continue basically the pattern that we had at the first row, of my front panel. And then I will repeat the pattern until I will finish the number of stitches that I have for the back panel, and I showed you these numbers before, but I think I will have 72 stitches. Yes, this was the number, so I will work 72 stitches. I will finish the section with knit two together, and then the last stitch it will be a knit one. And then I will turn and purl all the stitches. And then the third row of my armhole depth on the back panel, I will start with a knit one and then yarn over, knit two together. And we will repeat this section until the end of the row, and we will finish the row with a knit one. And we will repeat the 4 rows, because after finishing this one we will simply purl all the stitches, and we will repeat these 4 rows until we will have the same number of stitches as for the right front panel that we already finished, which were 30 rows, or you can check again the numbers. Okay, so I finished the back panel, and now what we will do, we will put the stitches on hold the same as we did with the front panel. And after doing that, we are about to start working on the left panel. And we will start with a knit one because we are starting from the armhole right now. And then because I need to finish this pattern with a yarn over, I will start with knit two together. And I will repeat knit two together, yarn over until I will have 8 stitches left, because at the end of the front panel I need to keep working the ribbing pattern. And I will work for this front panel the same number of rows, and now I finish this left front panel, and I'm letting the stitches on the needle, but I'm taking the other needle and I will pick up the stitches of the back panel. You can see that I will unreveal the strand of yarn that I use it to put the stitches on hold, and then pick up the stitches one by one. You can pick up the stitches without unrevealing the yarn, and then simply unreveal all at once. I was scared a bit to do so. I know that it's possible, and I knew even before, but because I wasn't sure about my yarn overs that need to be picked, it was easier for me to see them like this, to see where the strand of yarn that I used um, to put on hold, where is going, you know, through which loop. But you can try, and maybe you tried it before, so you can just pick up all the stitches and then unreveal the entire yarn. And the stitches need to be picked up from right to left, because the points of the needle need to meet at the armhole for the assembling. Okay, after I picked up all the stitches, so the pointing needles, the point of the needles needs to be next to the armhole, and now I will place them one on top of the other, because this will be the shoulders, so in the front will be the front panel, in the back will be the back panel. And now to join the shoulders, I will use, I don't remember right now how this method is used, or if it has a name, but I will use the crochet hook, and I have an 8mm one because I don't want the seam to be too tight. And I will use the crochet hook. We don't need even a yarn. I really like how it's looking, and I will start with the stitch on the needle in the front, so I will slip it to my crochet hook, and then I will go into the first stitches of the needle in the back. I will slip it also on the crochet hook, but then pass it through the loop that I already have on my hook, and I will continue like this, front back until I will have only the stitches left for the ribbing on my front panel, so until I will have 8 stitches. And if you're wondering what am I doing with the loop that I have on the crochet hook, you'll need to slip one more from the back, and then to put it on the back needle. Okay, let's see what we will need to do further. So I'm keep doing it until I will have only 8 stitches left on my front panel needle. Let's say it like this. Okay, now I have only the 8 stitches. Well, in this tutorial I'm having 6 because of the small sample, and now we will start to work the ribbing along the neckline. So to do so, I will pass all the stitches to the back panel needle. Let's say it like this, maybe it's easier than right and left, and then I will turn, and I will work in the ribbing pattern. You can also use a stitch marker, maybe it will be easier to mark those 8 stitches, but it's easy to figure out, and there is not too much to count. So I will work the first 7 stitches into the ribbing pattern. So I will join the yarn again here because I don't have any. So the first 7 stitches, the point is that we need to let one stitch from the ribbing and we will work that last stitch together with the next stitch or the first stitch that we have on the back. So we will work it together. Again, if you have any other method to do this, it's perfectly fine. I just find this that it's looking nice. I don't know how it's looking into I don't know, stockinette pattern or something like that. Maybe because it's lacy, it's not making a difference. The joining is not that visible. And then what I did, I just passed the next stitch from the back panel needle to the front panel needle and turn. And now I will work the first two stitches together. And then I will continue with the ribbing pattern, and basically we will repeat this because we want the ribbing to meet at half of the neckline. It doesn't matter if you're missing a few rows or if it's not meeting just in the middle. So basically we need to work 8 stitches more from the back panel, and at the end you need to have remain on the back panel to have 35 stitches for this original sample, which is the number of stitches that you have for the front panel. So you need to have the same number of stitches left on the back panel needle. And after finishing those stitches, we will simply bind off the ribbing, and we will wait for the other half to join them together at the middle of the neckline. If you want to join them in an invisible way, you can keep those stitches live and then join them properly, so you will have an invisible seam. I'm not yet with this finishing touches that into it to be perfect. I don't mind not being perfect. This is the for me, but if you want, you can use any other method. Okay, so now I finished with the ribbing, going with the ribbing along the neckline, and I will now bind off those 8 stitches of the ribbing, and let's see what we need to do next. Okay, so I finished at this end. I will show you right away. So this is my ribbing, bind off all the stitches, and now I need to, and here is where they will meet and where we will need to join them together. But now first we will need to join the other shoulder, so we will keep the same procedure with picking up the stitches for the front panel. Again, the pointing of the needles, the point of the needles need to meet at the armhole. And now I'm placing them again one on top of the other. This time, because we are in the opposite way, the one on the top will be the back panel needle, and the one on the back will be the front panel needle. Using the same method with the crochet hook, we will join the shoulder, the number of stitches, until we will have left on the front panel needle the 8 stitches for the ribbing. And then using the same method with the ribbing, we will work the rest of the stitches to bring the ribbing along the neckline at the back. Okay, so I have only the 8 stitches left for the ribbing, and now I'm picking them up. You can see here and count only 6 because this is how many stitches I left for the ribbing on this small sample. And now we will proceed the same as in the other side until we will finish all the stitches of the back panel. Then I bind off these ribbing stitches, and now using the darn needle I will join them. Again, I'm not following any particular technique for this. Maybe I will in the future with knitting, but I found this design being so mindless that I needed to keep it that way, at least for me. I will try um, to put those stitches, and even if I have a big gap, which is not necessarily a hole but is the eyelet pattern, I will try to pick them and then to hide this tail. And with this section, basically the body of the cardigan is done, and then we will need to work the sleeves. So now this is how the join is looking on the shoulders, and I like this method. I find it super easy, and it's looking nice. And now with the sleeves, I already worked this small sleeve. And for the sleeves we will pick up the stitches from the armhole, but of course if you find it easier to work it other way, you can do so. But this is how I designed this, and this is how I will show you. But any alteration of the pattern, if you feel confident about it, it's up to you. For the sleeve I will use smaller needles. These have a cord of 40 centimeter, or they are 40 centimeter in circumference. Let me pick this camera a bit closer. And the pattern for picking up the stitches, it's to pick up 2, skip 1. The side rows on the armhole will be a bit weird or awkward because of those eyelets, so some of the side rows will be really loose, but try to keep this 2, skip 1. But of course this is according with my tension. What you need to calculate is rows versus stitches, and see what is the proportion of your tension, and calculate how many stitches you'll need per row. And this needs to be the one proper that you will need to use. But I for these 8mm needles and this pattern, 2, skip 1 is working, or at least worked for me for this small sample, and also and also for the original sample. What you need to have in mind is that you will need a multiple of 2 stitches, and you can work using these small circular needles or other methods like loop method. You can work this sleeves in the round, and if you're working in the round, then keep in mind that the even row, which on the flat it was a purl row, now it will be a knit row. Knit all the stitches. I will work this small sleeve working it flat, so I will turn after each row, because it was really difficult. Maybe if maybe with this smaller size is easier with double pointed needles, because we have such a small circumference. Of course, that you can work with double pointed needle even on the big sleeve if you find it easier to do so. I decided for this small sleeve to just turn after each row, because the stitch pattern it's already lacy, and in case some of the stitches are getting looser, at least for the first a few rounds while I'm stretching the edging, because I need to work the stitches, but in this lace pattern is not that visible. Maybe if I will use stockinette or something, I will try to work them in a different method, just to make it look as neat as possible and not to have the stitches looser. So the point is, you need to pick up an even number of rows. If you're working the sleeve flat, then you should start as for the back panel with a knit one and finish with a knit one, and between those stitches to work the stitch pattern. If you're working in the round, you can start right away with knit two together and yarn over, and you'll finish the round with a yarn over, but because we're working circular, we don't mind that. Now, because I'm working flat, after picking up the stitches, it's easier to simply turn and work the purl row as the first row. But if you're working circular, you just continue with the first row. Of course, you can work with the first row as the knit one all around. It's not a problem now. So for the sleeves, I keep the same color pattern, which with 16 rows in one color, then two rows with the second color I want to use, then 2 rows with the first color, and then changing to the second color again. But I worked as many blocks as I could in the length that I needed. And with the third color, basically I remained to work only a couple of rows and the cuff ribbing. But yeah, this is how you plan to work with the colors, or because this is at least for size small, XS, small, and medium, and I think up to large. It's working with a single skein of yarn of each color, so it's a perfect project for this kind of yarn. And if you want, you can calculate the number of rows that you can make with each color. Okay, so now you just saw the number of rows for each size for the sleeve. And after finishing the length, I simply worked one row with a few decreases and then the ribbing pattern. The pattern for decreasing, or knit two together, knit one, is not mandatory, but just if you want the cuff to be smaller or narrower, then you will need a few decreases to have less stitches for the ribbing. And then the ribbing, I worked the ribbing one knit, one purl, and for the same number of rows as the bottom of the ribbing, which was 8 rows. But if you want a longer cuff, then you can work more rows if you need. So after finishing this sleeve, and the second one, of course, for me, for this small sample, is the last sleeve, then basically the pattern and the cardigan is done. And what you need to do is to weave in all looser ends and then to block this cardigan. I need to pay attention for the original sample that it's becoming heavy and with those looser stitches, basically when laying the cardigan flat will be shorter than when wearing it. But it looks nice and I hope you like it. I will show you right away how the original sleeves is looking to give you clear view about it. So I worked 2 blocks of color, and then I had those 4 rows at the end of a block, and then I had a knit one, purl one, and for the ribbing. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.